Welcome back everyone. Today let's discuss about different types of standard methods to find out a solution while we are writing pseudocode. So on moving with different types of solutions, we can see that we will come across totaling, counting, finding maximum or minimum or average, then searching for something and sorting. So these are important 5 methods to reach to a solution. So let's go one by one. So first let's know about the totaling. So totaling is nothing but to find the total of something. Like for example, we are having some 5 students and they are having the marks 45, 35, 24 or something, and we need to get the total of all these marks. Okay, so this is what is actually total is happening. So we are having some set of things and we need to find the sum of everything. So for that, while we are writing the pseudocode, initially we will start with a variable named as total, and it will be assigned to 0. So as we have discussed in pseudocode, this means equal to, okay, assigning. So now the total is having the value 0. Now here for this example we have 3 marks. So suppose imagine we need to find out the total marks of all the students in a class, and assume that this class is having a size of 30 or something, and we are just storing that value in the class size. Okay, so what we are having is we are having marks and we need to add the marks, and the size of the class is class size. So the marks of a number of students will be stored in the form of array, which will be discussed later. For now, what you have to understand is marks of, if we are declaring an array like marks of 10, it means it will have mark of 0, mark of 1, etc. till mark of 9. Okay, so we will be able to store 10 marks here. So in this what we are trying to do is we are having a class size, so it can be 30, 40 or whatever it is, and we are trying to find out the total marks of all students. So our result will be stored in this total, and we are just initially assigning this total's value as 0. Okay, now back to the pseudocode. So now what we want to do is we have the class size, and for each student we need to take the marks and add one by one. So if you remember in the iteration, if we are aware of the size of the how many repetitions we are needed, we will go for loop. So here we will go for the for loop. So for syntax is like for, and we need to have a counter or a variable where the value will start. Now here we have 1 to class size, we need to add the marks. So we are setting the counter will start from 1 and it should move to the class size. So this will be whatever the class size till that. Okay, now inside that what we want to do is we want to find out the total. So we will take this total, and this for loop will take each mark one by one. So what we are going to do is, what was the previous total, that plus what is the mark of current counter, that is current student. This counter will move from 1 to class size. So when we are explaining, it will be like 1 to 30 means 1 to 30 marks will be there. Okay, so this initially this will be 1, so this counter will turn to 1. After that, if it is doing, then counter will be incremented and it will turn 2, 3, etc. up to class size. So we will go through all these marks of the students. Okay, and as in the for syntax, after this line we have the keyword next, and we have to provide the counter whose value will be incremented. So once this for loop is executed, all the marks will be added and it will be stored in this total. So so this is how, and when you want to, you can write output total, like total equal to, when we give in double quotes it will display like this, and you are providing the variable total. So the output will be like total equal to whatever the answer we got, that one. Okay, so this is one of the important process in totaling. Okay, now next we are having the second method, that is nothing but counting. Counting is nothing but we are counting like how many counts are there. For example, we have this, we can take the previous examples of marks, and many students will get different types of marks. Suppose the marks is out of 100 and we are having the pass mark as 50 or above 50. So we want to know how many students passed. Okay, so the count of students who have passed, that is where the relevance of counting is actually coming. So here counting is basically used to understand how many students have passed or how many students have failed, or like when we are taking a survey, how many have opted for the chocolates and how many opted for ice cream. Like we need to get some count, like how many are attending the function, those kind of things. So look at this example, the pseudocode. Here we are writing the counting function to know the count of students who have passed. Count of students passed. Okay, so we are imagining that those students who have got more than 50 marks are passed, all are others are failed. So now look at the pseudocode. Here you can see this pass count is a variable which we have set to 0. It will be in this pass count. Once we have finished execution, you will get the number of students who have passed. Now again we are starting our for loop as usual from 1 to the class size, how many students are there. And now the student mark is inputted. This statement will allow us to input the student mark, and it is then passed to if statement where a comparison is done where whether the student mark is greater than or 50. Okay, if the mark is greater than 50, that means our condition is it should be greater than 50 to pass. So whenever it is greater than 50, what happens is pass count is incremented by 1, so it will be stored. Okay, and finally for the output we will write output pass count, so it will give the number of students passed. Now take for example when you have entered the mark as 45, what happens, student mark is not greater than 50, so hence if this is not worked. Okay, and the counter will be increased and again it will ask for input student mark. Now suppose imagine now we are entering 60 means this is true. So this, if student mark is greater than 50, so this line will be executed. So initially what was the value in pass count, that plus 1. So similarly this will go on, and finally when we print out we will get this. When we output the pass count, we have the total number of students who have passed. Okay, so the difference between totaling and counting is totaling just adds up all the marks and counting just counts like how many have passed. Okay, so these are the two processes. Now next one is finding maximum, minimum or average. Okay, so in order to find maximum and minimum, the situation is like you are having some set of numbers or marks, whatever it is. Okay, so we will have this is 46 and 75. Okay, so we are given with set of numbers and we need to find out which is the largest. So it should output like maximum is 64, not 64, 70, and minimum is nothing but 5. So we have to get the maximum and minimum from a set of marks. Okay, now here what we have to do is, here in order to find, when we are writing the pseudocode, what we actually doing is we will initially first set two values, that is one is maximum and another one is minimum. Okay, and we will suppose we want to find the maximum and minimum marks of marks acquired by students, where the exam total marks was 100. We know that the maximum value it can take is 100 and minimum value will be 0. So before that in order to execute this, what we do is we always assign the maximum value as the smallest number and the minimum value as the largest bound. Okay, and whenever first mark is taken, suppose this 45 is taken, when this 45 is taken, what actually happens is it will compare with what was in maximum. Okay, and it will compare whether 45 or 0, which is greater. So what is the greater one that is placed? So here it is 45. Again it will also check with this minimum, and it will check 45 or 100, which is lesser. So whatever the compare and whatever is lesser, that will be placed. So it is 45. Okay, now just imagine it is going to the second number. Again it will compare with maximum. So 64 and 45, that means here now 64 is there and presently we are having 45. So in 64 and 45, we know that 64 is the bigger, so that will be 45 will be replaced with 64. Again the 64 is compared with this minimum 45, so 64 and 45, which is lesser, that will be placed. So here it is 45. This is how the comparison is done. Okay, now as we discussed earlier, these are the marks and this will be stored in some array like this. Okay, now let's write the pseudocode for this. So while writing the pseudocode, just understand this concept and let's write it now. Okay, now just see that. So as I said, we have two variables. One is to store maximum, that we are storing with 0. Sorry, we have to use this sign when we are writing the algorithm or pseudocode, and I am writing this minimum to 100 because 100 is the maximum mark that a student can occur. Now we are going to the for loop, where as usual we will start the counter from 1, that is from the first mark, and we are imagining the size of class is class size. So it will go through this, and inside that, as we told, we were comparing the marks with maximum and what we entered. So inside that we are going to start an if loop. Okay, and if this loop, what it is going to check is, this is the mark. Okay, mark presently that is taken, mark of counter. So this will be the first mark first, and we check if the marks of counter is greater than the maximum, what is in maximum. If it is true, means whatever the mark is come, that is larger. So we need to replace maximum with this mark. So we will write, then what we have to do, we want to replace the maximum with the value in the present mark counter, and we will end the end if. So this is compared for the set the maximum. Similarly we need to check for the minimum. So again you will write an if statement where you will again compare with mark of counter, and you will check whether this mark is less than what is present in minimum. If this is less than what is present in minimum, it means that that is the minimum mark is the present one what we are in. So then what we need to do is, we need to set the minimum mark as what is the present one. Okay, this is how we present the other logic, and you have to close the end if. Okay, and after that, as usual, what we need to do is we need to close this for loop. So this is next counter. Okay, so this is how we write the pseudocode. So understand that this part compares whether the mark we entered is greater than what is stored in maximum. If it is so, it will replace, and this code is represent to find the minimum. So once all this for loop is exited, you will get the minimum. You can output in when whatever we give in double quotes will be printed as such. So you can give like maximum equal to, it is nothing but the value in maximum, and also you can output minimum value, that is nothing but minimum equal to minimum. So this is how we write the pseudocode for maximum and minimum. Now here there is one thing to note, that is nothing but Here we know that 0 is the least mark and 100 is the highest mark. Sometimes there may be situations where we don't know which will be the highest value it can take and which is the smallest value it can take. In that case, what we do is, in that scenario comes, what we do is, we will just assign the maximum as, instead of 0, what we do is, we will take the first value and assign that as the maximum, and similarly we will take the minimum value and assign the first value as minimum. Okay, 1. So that is to be considered. So this is the case when we know which is the lowest boundary and the highest boundary. So what is the lowest one, we will assign to maximum, and the highest one we will assign to minimum. Similarly, if it is not, we will do the vice versa, like we will assign the first value. So that is the maximum and minimum. And in this itself we are having an option to find the average. So in order to find the average, you can see that average is nothing but, here when you see, after finding the total mark from here, when we exit in the totaling, total is find out. So you know average is nothing but total by n, or size. So here it can be calculated average. If you are having to find out the average, you will take a for loop and find out the total value of all the marks, and after that you will find out average is equal to, average is total divided by class size, because this gives the number of students, and you can output average equal to, in double quotes, and you can give average. So these are the different types of methods to find the solution. Among this we have discussed totaling, counting, finding maximum, minimum and average. The next two is searching and sorting, which I will record in another video. So thank you and have a nice day.